Welcome to the Crazy Chicken People podcast. If you're crazy about chickens, then you're in the right place. Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Crazy Chicken People podcast. Today's episode is one that I had actually intended on doing last week before I got sidelined by those troublesome hens. And it addresses a topic that I always figured I'd have to deal with at some point: egg-eating chickens. I guess I was lucky to not have trouble with this sooner. Made it almost 3 years of only having to worry about blue jays pecking at our eggs. But now that I have a chicken who's developed a taste for them, I need to find a way to get it fixed. The sooner the better. It's kind of a bummer when I go out to collect just to find a nesting box full of broken shells and egg yolk that's spilled out all over the place, making a mess of all the bedding. And even when it's just one egg that's been cracked open, usually the rest of them have gotten pretty messy too, getting pushed around in that pool of egg juice to the point that I either have to wash them, find a way to use them right away, or feed them to Rosie. And when I'm collecting 10 to 12 eggs a day, but only getting a few that are clean enough to store, the use now pile starts to stack up faster than I can keep up with. And if that wasn't enough, I'm also having to spend way more time than usual cleaning out those nesting boxes so that the leftovers don't start attracting other pests. So today, we're going to talk about some of the possible reasons a chicken may have for getting into those eggs in the first place, and what we can do to stop it. And while there's a bunch of suggestions we'll cover for things you can do to turn your chickens off this bad habit, I'll also tell you about the one that I'm going to put into use right away that may not exactly get your problem bird to stop trying to eat those eggs, but it will make it extremely difficult for her to do so, hopefully impossible. Egg-eating chickens is a pretty common problem that most poultry keepers are going to face at some point. And it can be frustrating to find that those eggs you've put in so much work to get are disappearing before you can even collect them. And to really treat this problem correctly, it's important that you try to understand what's causing it in the first place so that you can address the problem directly. There's a few reasons chickens might start eating their own eggs, but the first thing that should be looked at is your chicken's total diet and if they're getting enough of everything they need. If your chicken's body is experiencing some kind of a nutritional deficiency, and this could be a shortage of protein or calcium, their instincts are going to tell them to start looking for a way to supplement what they're missing through some other source. Most of the quality layer feeds out there are going to provide these nutrients, but for reasons out of your control, it may just not be enough. Calcium is something that active laying hens need plenty of, and without some additional source of this, like oyster shell or crushed up eggshell, their layer feed alone may end up leaving them looking for it in other places. But there's other factors that can lead to your hens going after eggs as well. If they're hungry and getting tired of their daily feed, they may get curious and see what happens if they start pecking on them. Being stressed out, maybe due to overcrowding or meeting some new coop mates, or if they just get bored and don't have anything in their space to keep them entertained. It could be a problem with parasites that cause your chickens to start doing things that aren't healthy for them. And it's also possible they take a nibble of an egg that was accidentally broken and come to find out there's a tasty treat inside those shells that they've been missing out on. I can't say for sure what caused my hen Bandit, who I recently was able to identify as the offender, to start this habit, but I think I've got an idea. I started to notice this just a few weeks ago. Just a little bit after I noticed that the blue jays were back in full force and once again trying to get into the nesting boxes. I'm pretty sure that they got in there, opened up the top of a few eggs, and then probably got scared out before finishing their meal, leaving a couple of cracked open eggs, and Bandit decided to take a taste. It actually took me a while to figure out who was doing it, but just recently I joined my 2 flocks of standard-sized chickens together after finishing up that run expansion I've been working on. And I found her. Maybe she was trying to make new friends by showing them this trick she had learned. I saw her and a few others in the coop, all gorging themselves on a couple of eggs that they had pulled out of the box. They didn't know I was watching from the barn side of the coop, and I saw her go into that box, peck a hole in an egg, grab it, and carry it out. Once I knew it was for sure her, I ran in there yelling at them all like I just caught my kids watching something on TV they shouldn't, and most of them just scattered off, probably knowing they were in trouble. But Bandit stuck around, maybe thinking that because she's my favorite that I would take it easy on her. But I let her know that she was a bad girl. She didn't argue. She knew that she'd been caught with egg on her face. And I let her know how disappointed I was in her for making a mess and teaching everyone else her bad habits. So now I have a whole group of chickens who know how tasty those eggs are and that I'll have to keep from attacking them probably every day. Okay, so now that we've gone over some of the different possible causes of this behavior, let's talk about some of the practical solutions that you can try at home to address the issue and keep your favorite hen from getting into trouble too. The first step in combating egg-eating behavior is to make sure that your chickens are receiving a healthy, balanced diet, getting all the calcium and protein that they need to keep laying. As we've talked about a lot of times before, this is another reason that providing a quality layer feed is the first and most important start to making sure that their nutritional needs are being met. There's lots of ways to go about this. I know some people prefer crumble or pellets. You might have a feed available to them all the time, or if you ferment your feed, maybe you have them on a meal schedule. I think that any of these choices that work for you are probably just fine with your chickens as long as they're getting enough food when they need it. But if you want to boost their calcium intake, or really just make sure that they're always getting enough, you can feed crushed eggshells back to them. And I like to do this weekly at the same time that I feed them their scrambled eggs, which is another great source of nutrition for them. I like to try to make sure each chicken gets at least 1 egg's worth a week, but it's also important to get them some calcium from another outside source. You don't want to rely on just continually recycling the same minerals over and over using their eggshells. Oyster shell is probably the easiest and the most common way to do that. You can free feed this to them in a separate dish or just mix it into their feed, and that's what I like to do. It seems to be the easiest way to go. They'll take it in when they need it and just leave it in the feeder when they don't. But there is lots of other ways that you can get them quality calcium as well. Foods like yogurt, cooked beans and lentils, leafy greens like kale and spinach, or the black soldier fly larvae that you can get for them have a ton of calcium and protein, but you just want to make sure, like anything else, you feed it in moderation. Okay, so besides a healthy diet, which I would guess that all your chickens are already getting, what are some of the other ways that we can deter our birds from going after those eggs or help them to break this habit if they've already developed a taste for it? Probably the best and also the hardest way is to try to collect those eggs before they even have time to go after them. This one's tough for me. There's just no way that I can get in there to collect twice a day, or really any earlier than well into the afternoon after they've had plenty of time to hit the buffet. But if you can, this is probably your best bet. Collecting a couple times through the late morning and the early afternoon will not just keep your eggs safe from chickens eating them, but it can help to keep hens from trying to hatch them, it'll keep them cleaner, and it'll help reduce the accidental breaks when you get 4 or 5 or maybe more hens than that all like to use the same nesting box. A lot of people suggest the fake porcelain eggs, the idea being that after a few attempts of trying to peck at those, they get discouraged and just move on. But just like with the mustard egg, where you poke a small hole in an eggshell, drain it out, and then fill it with mustard, hoping that your chickens will get a taste of that and move on, you have to hope that when your problem hen jumps into that nesting box to crack one open, that she actually chooses that hard or that mustard-filled egg first. Both are probably worth a try, but seems like a process that could take a while to work and quite a bit of time to keep making those mustard bombs every day. Another strategy, and this goes well beyond just preventing egg eating, is to make sure you're providing enough things for your chickens to do in their space to keep them entertained. Bored chickens looking for a way to stay busy are far more prone to going after those eggs than a chicken who can stay entertained in other ways. Making sure they've got a dust bath, some elevated perches they can run around on, or new things to peck at like an old rotting log or a bundle of wild grass strung up, can help to keep them occupied and less likely to engage in these negative behaviors. With some time and some patience, these things, combined with removing the eggs from the nest as soon as possible, should help to break some of those bad habits and keep those eggs from going to waste. And the enrichment activities are something your chickens need anyways to help keep stress levels down and avoid other bad habits like excessive pecking, feather eating, or bullying of some of those hens lower on the pecking order. But if you've already tried some of these ideas and you're still seeing your eggs getting pecked at, or if you just don't want to deal with the trial and error of figuring out what works best for your flock, I think there's another option worth looking at. Nesting boxes designed for the eggs to roll into a collection tray that your chickens can't get to. When I tried raising quail for a while, I had set up their pens like this. I built them so that the floor was at an angle and anything round that landed on it would roll to the bottom, out of the space they lived in, to a little tray where the eggs would sit until I collected them. It took me a while to realize that I needed to put a cover on that tray because the blue jays saw that as a convenient place to perch up and just snack away. But I don't see any reason why this wouldn't work for protecting your chicken eggs too. There's a bunch of these available that you can buy, although I don't think I've ever seen them in stores. But you can definitely find them on Amazon, probably other places online. And I looked up a few just to see how they were built. But I don't love the idea of paying $100 or $200 for something that I can make myself pretty easily and probably with stuff I already have around. And I didn't really like the ones I saw anyways. They were kind of small, made with a lot of plastic, and I want the option of taking the slope out of them down the road if I want to. I'm hoping that once I get these in their coop, I'll remove the other nesting boxes so this is their only option. And maybe after a couple of weeks or even a couple of months of my chickens not being able to get at those eggs, that they'll just lose the desire to peck at them altogether. Or maybe I just leave them set up like that forever if it doesn't seem to bother the girls. I'm just not sure that they'll like sitting on that sloped floor or not. But I bet this will help to keep the eggs a little cleaner too. And if you're trying to keep a hen from sitting on eggs, it'll help with that. One thing I kind of messed up on when I did that quail coop was the eggs would all end up kind of rolling to the same spot. I noticed that the boxes I saw on Amazon were set up pretty much the same, where any of the eggs that got laid in there were probably going to land together and possibly crack like some of the quail eggs did. So I think I'm going to make that tray pretty deep from front to back so that the eggs have a better shot at not crashing into each other. And I'm going to line it with some of the same foam rubber padding that I use on the bottom of the nesting boxes right now. I think that with that and making sure the backstop is padded, it should keep anything from breaking. I'll probably put a bunch of shavings in there too, just to soften the landing. But when I get this built, if it doesn't look too janky, I'll definitely get some pictures posted. Okay, before I wrap up, I wanted to share a couple listener questions that I got just over the past few days that I thought were kind of fun. The first one, and by the way, this came from Coop Commander. That's all I got to go off of for a name. Coop Commander. Pretty cool handle. They wrote me a really nice message, and they actually asked if I would read it on an episode. If I had held to what I said about not getting any more baby chicks this year, or if I gave in. I did not stick to that. Nope. I picked up 8 chicks about 4 weeks ago from Feather Baby Farm. I got 3 Saramas and 3... I'm still trying to get the pronunciation of this down. I had to Google it actually to see what it's supposed to look like. I think it's Millefleur du Quai. They're those little tiny ones that are super colorful. I'm not going to try to say that again. And I also got 2 of the porcelain colored version of those. They are super cute. So I couldn't not get some chicks. And I really wanted to get some other bantams to put in with one of our silky groups that now that they're going to have a much larger coop and run. And I think I may have to take some chicks in that were hatched at my kid's school just recently. I don't know. I'd rather not, but I think I might have to anyways. Okay, the other question that I wanted to share, because I thought it was a good one. Somebody was letting me know that they're having a problem with their hens sleeping outside still, not going in the coop. And they had mentioned that they did listen to the episode I did on that, and they tried a bunch of the solutions that I offered up, and it still wasn't working. So I wanted to first just say, I also have a group of chickens that none of those solutions have worked for. The majority it has, even some of the silkies, which were the hardest ones to kind of get trained to go into their coop at night. But I've got 5 chickens that every single night I go out there, usually just after the sun goes down, and I take them into the coop with everybody else. I hate to say that maybe all those suggestions I provided don't work. I think they actually do most of the time. I honestly think with this group of chickens, I mean, they don't mind sleeping in the coop. They don't leave once I put them there. I genuinely think that they just enjoy being carried in every night. And I kind of enjoy carrying them in every night. It's a good chance to check on them, make sure they're doing good, and kind of bond with them a little bit. So I don't have any better suggestions for you that I didn't include in that episode, but I would just say keep trying what you're doing. And worst case, you get to see your chickens every night and give them a little ride. Okay, guys, thank you so much again for listening. Hope that you and your chickens are all having a great week. I'll talk to you again soon.